Hey, it's Yondai here, and we're gonna make a comp builder video. Um, just talking about how to build comps in TFT and like how you should be going about the game. So, starting at the first carousel, you're gonna want a tier 2 unit, so one of these green units. And you do this because you generally want to sell it once after the first creep round is done, so you have more gold and you can spend more in the first round and buy all the tier 1s you want. And then if you can't get a tier 2 unit and then you just want to pick um, based on the items. So top tier items are like the giant's belt, um, a recurve bow, uh, spatula, and like needless, and I guess BF sword a little bit. It's probably one of on the lower end though. And you want to do this because the early game is all about figuring which tier 1 units you can get to silver, which is when you have three of them, you combine to silver, and three silvers make a gold. You need to figure out which one costs you want to level up to silver tier, which one cost you want to, and then which one cost you want to build around. So essentially, these one cost means that you're going to get to silver are going to carry you through the early game and start um, when you get on your way. So let's talk about knights. So knights are pretty good early game buff. You get damage blocked in all autos that they take, which is pretty nice for a nice front line. And then you can put like any hero behind him, like a Vayne or a Tristana or a Nidalee. These are these are three pretty good DPS. You can even put a Kha'Zix behind them. Kha'Zix can jump, or Graves is okay, but not as good if you don't have the gunslinger passive. So knights are pretty good. Mordekaiser is on the lower end of knights because his base HP is a lot lower than these two. But so that's the knight package. The next package I want to talk about is like the noble one. If you get Fiora, Garen, Vayne, or even if you just get Garen, Vayne, you can start building towards nobles and maybe get a Fiora in there and you get the noble passive. And noble passive is very good early game, and then it scales decently well until later in the game because you might get the noble passive on on one of your carries, which is pretty nice. So this package is pretty good. Another package you can go as gunslingers, and then you can throw in like your knights in front of them, and then you have this, which is pretty nice. I just wouldn't. Kha'Zix is pretty good, splashable in anything really. Another something that's interesting is like is wild. You can go Warwick Nidalee, and then like anything in front of them, like anything tanky would be nice. Or if you just want more DPS, you can go the gunslingers. Just I would stay away from Caston unless you get a bunch of him. If you get silver Caston pretty early, then you can transition this into maybe like wild or something. You could just splash cast um in any comp if you have a bunch of him. He's kind of weak when he's just by himself. You kind of need him silver or gold for him to do anything really, because he dies too early. So this is those are like the pretty early compositions that you want to look for. You want something that can tank like either the knight passive, or you can start building with Warwick and get the brawler passive with the either like a blitzcrank later, and you get the brawler passive, and then some type of DPS behind them. Something that um, is an easy way to lose in TFT is if you have a bunch of tanky units and you don't have any DPS. Later on, tanks can do damage through CC and utility, but early game you really need a DPS and to put items on and stuff. So Garen could be a DPS if you have like Merle Nomicon or something. Merle Nomicon and like Ginsu's, so he can ult all the time and burn people with ulti. But other than that, you kind of need DPS either through gunslingers, either or Vayne Nidalee. So these four are like pretty good DPS, safe DPS picks. Other DPS picks is Kha'Zix. If you get him to silver pretty easily, then he can be pretty good. His isolation damage is pretty good. But other than that, it's hard for like casting the carry unless he has a ton of items and you get a ton of attack speed early on in the game. But you'd rather just place on these guys. So with this type of comps, for example, you have knights and then you have gunslingers. So something like this, right? You have knights, gunslingers, nice. You have DPS, you have frontline. You want to put your items on Tristana because she has the highest base attack speed. Um, and Something similar to that is you can put items on Italy, Tristana, Vayne. These are like the people you want to put items on. If you have Morello Nomicon, you can put it on Garen. But besides that, that's sort of what you want to be focusing on in the early game is figuring out which one cost you want to turn to silver and which ones are worth upgrading. So, for example, let's take a situation where you're given Garen and Tristana, and you get these to silver pretty easily. So now you're wondering, wow, so what am I gonna do with this? So now you're looking for another knight to match him. So you either get Mord or Garen. Even if they're not silver yet, they're just like a bronze tier. You could just take them for the buff, and then you're looking for Graves, and then this is your early game, right? So that's sort of what you wanna that's sort of you wanna look at. So let's transition to the tier twos. Tier twos are pretty weak in the game right now compared to tier ones. I would stay away from Rek'Sai Shen, because Shen is a Blade Master. Blade Master isn't very good early game. You kind of have to wait later until you get to the better Blade Masters. Like GP is actually okay, and GP and like Draven, for example, and Yasuo. So a lot of them are like high end. So I think these you want to avoid. Let's see who else you want to avoid. Blitzcrank's actually okay. Braum, you only really want Braum if you're splashing nobles. The reason why you do that is, I guess we'll talk about that later with the noble composition. Your Lulu's pretty good early game. If you want to, if you have no idea where your comp's going, Lulu can supplement a decent early game because her ult, actually the utility from her ult is very good early game, but later in the game it's not very good because it's random and she doesn't really do much besides that. Besides that, some of the carries you can start building around. So for example, if you have a Vayne, if you have a Vayne and you have the Archer, you can pick up Varus. Varus is a nice Archer to couple with her. Ari can fit with your wild composition, so you can start building wilds. Blitzcrank can be a good brawler to pair with Warwick. He's probably the best tier 2 brawler. The other one's Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai's kind of trash right now. Braum you want to avoid unless you are going nobles. So if you know you're going nobles and you're going like something like this with Vayne, and you already have the Lucian for nobles, then maybe you can start picking up Brahms. But getting Braum to silver isn't very good, really. You kind of only keep him for the Guardian passive later on in the game. Nidalee as a shapeshifter is very good if you have Nidalee. If you have this wild package with this Nidalee shapeshifter, you can go shapeshifter Elise, which is nice. Her spiders just gained a lot of HP in the last patch. Elementalist can be good, but I think Lissandra overall is a weak pick. You should probably just avoid Lissandra because the Elementalists later in the game are a lot better. Noble you can pick up if you need a gunslinger, or if you want the noble passive. So if you, for example, have like this, you have knights plus nobles, for example, something like this, you can easily replace the Fiora with the Lucian and just hold Fiora at one star or at bronze or silver and until late game and start upgrading Lucian. Then you get this nice Knight Noble passive, which is nice. Pike can be good with Assassin. So if you have a Kha'Zix, that's 3 star or silver, you can have Pike, and then you can add just maybe Gunslingers or Wild or just anything really. With Knights, you can go Knights, and then this Assassin comp can be good with Zed. Um, and then you can get the 3 assassins, which is pretty nice. Pike is actually pretty good right now. You want to avoid Rek'Sai and Shen, and then we talked about these two. So that's sort of what the 1 cost and 2 costs can do for you right now. 3 costs right now, I would avoid demons in general, and then Aatrox in specific because his stats just aren't very good. Um, Pretty poor right now. And Blade Master doesn't really get good until the later Blade Master units like Draven and Yasuo. Ashe is just similar like Varus, very good glacial passive with archers. So if you already have Vayne and Varus, you have Vayne Silver, then you sort of want to be looking for the Rangers here. Evelyn's a nice assassin to pair up with Pike Zed and Kha'Zix, and you can start building towards assassins that way. Elise, I think, is one of the lesser assassins, or maybe like less good, but can still be pretty good. If you have Pike Kha'Zix and you're going for this type of thing, you can go Gangplank and try to get the pirate passive with Graves, and you have Tristan or something like that, and you have gunslingers and pirates. You can start getting some early gold. Katarina's a pretty good assassin. Her ult's very useful. You can start building that. Elementalist, Ken's one of the good elementalists. You can start building Elementalist, which you can actually splash Elementalist into any of the compositions. Because they do a lot they do have a lot of utility with CC. They do a lot of damage. Ken and Brand, Anivia do a lot of damage. And you can essentially create a front line because with three Elementalists you get this Golem that has like 1,000 HP or something, and it's very tanky and hard to get through unless you have HP burn like Vayne or something, or Morel Nomicon. So Cannon's actually a pretty safe pickup. You can splash Elementalist into like any real composition. Morgana got buffed and is actually pretty good right now as sorcerer. So if you have like, if you got a silver casting pretty early on, you combine that with maybe you have knights, and then you kind of have a random DPS just thrown in there. You can actually round this comp out with like a sorcerer, and then you can get another sorcerer like Vagar or Vagar or Ari or something, and you can start getting the sorcerer passive. And that can be pretty deadly if you have the right items on the sorcerers. Let's look at Poppy. I would say Poppy is one of the weaker knights because she's a knight packed with Yordle. It's kind of weak. Yordle's on. It's not bad, but it's on definitely on the lower end of passives. So for example, Darius is a knight. Let's talk about all the knights. Darius is a knight but has Imperial, so you can pair that with Draven later on in the game, which could be pretty good. You have Garen, which is a noble, but obviously I talked about the noble passive being very good. Mordekaiser's a phantom, so you can pair that with Kindred or Karthus, which can be very good later on. But Yordle by itself is a very poor, so I guess I would stay away from Poppy. Rengar's one of the worst assassins in the game. He definitely needs items. He definitely needs attack speed and IE to do things, which kind of sucks because early on, if you commit those to win early game with Triss, Nidalee, or Vayne, you're not going to have those on Rengar. So shapeshifters can be good. If you have shapeshifters like this, you can get with knights. This can actually do a decent amount of damage if you have items on Nidalee or Shyvana. It can be very good. We talked about Veigar, and Volibear is a good brawler you can pair with if you're going Rek'Sai or something. Or Warwick, I mean. You can get a nice brawler passive and start building towards Glacial. So there's that. Um, Now we're getting into the S tier really strong picks. So I would say let's combine these. So these picks here, let's go with Kale, Kale, Acel, and Brand. So these four picks you can splash into any team comp. Even if you have Knights and you're going Gunslingers, you could just throw in a Kale, you could throw in a Acel, you can throw in a Brand, and you could just throw items on them. Transition, maybe you can get rid of a Lucian, like you're on Nobles right now, for example, and you have Nobles right now, and you're not getting the other nodes, you're not getting Leona, you're not getting the higher end Noble picks, then you can start transitioning, get rid of Lucian, put in a Kale, put in Acel, put in a Brand, and start just you maybe remove all the items from these lesser cost champions and start putting them on your high cost ones for more efficient carries. Other than that, assassins have Akali. You have Cho'Gath is actually decent if you want the Void or Brawler passive. Draven's a good Imperial. I talked about that. Shapeshifter, Wild, Gnar is very good. Gnar is actually pretty splashable as well. You can just throw him in to any team composition. Kindred if you need rangers, archers. Leona's very good. So let's talk about the noble. So since we're in the high cost units, we can start talking about late game compositions. So let's say you have the nobles. Let's say Graves like this, Lucian, Leona, and Kale. So let's say you finally get this comp right. So just thinking in hindsight, right, when you're looking for stuff like this, if you have five of the nobles and you're just looking for Kale, right, you sort of want to figure out what people you want to fill this gap with, right? These next three picks. You can easily just add in Braum and you immediately get the Guardian passive. At the start of combat, all Guardians and adjacent allies receive 40 armor, which is very nice. Extra armor plus the no plus the Noble passive plus the on hit is going to make your team pretty tanky, and only susceptible to AP damage. So you can start putting Negatron clicks on your carries like Kale and something, and then your comps essentially unkillable, which is pretty nice. If you have this comp and then you have Dragon's Claw on Kale and Dragon's Claw on like Vayne or something like that, then you're pretty unkillable. So after this, you look at what else we're building. You have Glacial, so you can throw in easy one Glacial. You can throw in Sedge. You can throw in Volibear. You can throw in Ash, and you actually get the Glacial and the Ranger pass, which is kind of nice. And then you have one more pick. You can throw in, Yasuo or whatever, or Nivea to get more Glacials, stuff like that. So this is pretty nice. This is a nice composition that can scale pretty late into the game. Something we can get is Elementalist and Glacial. So let's say you have the good Elementalist, you have Kennen, um, Kennen Brand, and Anivia, I guess. Let's go these three, and then you can go um, the shit. Wait, what did I say I was saying? Glacial. So you can go like the front line, like Sejuani, Volibear, and you can throw in like Braum, and then you can start throwing in Leona, stuff like that. Um, this can be very good. If you don't want to go Braum, you can go like Ash or something, and then you can start throwing archers. So this comp is a lot of high chi units. You have 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5. So thinking about the early game with this comp, maybe you want archers. You can throw in maybe Vayne, and then you have Knights, and then now this is the type of composition you want. So you have this early game comp, and you can transition into the late game picks. The thing about TF2 is you want to play with what you're given. You don't want to waste money refreshing early after the chances of getting like high tier ones. So like you don't want to waste a ton of money on refreshes if you don't have a clear strat. So you want to keep in mind what tier ones did you pick up and what we want to build around, and then sort of have a path so that when units come up, you can just start picking them and start spending more time looking at enemy composition and stuff like that. So now let's look at so Draven's that this so these are pretty good. I would say Phantom's very good with Karthus because you reduce one person to 1 HP, and then even if they're backline and you don't have AoE, you can have Karthus ult and kill them. MF has one of the highest attack speeds in the game. You have Kale and Yasuo. I think Kale's at 1.1, Yasuo's 1 attack speed, and then MF's like second at zero point 0.8 or something. So it's just MF's pretty splashable as well. Another composition late game that can work is Assassins. So if you have all the Assassins, Kha'Zix, Pirate, I actually advise 3 Assassins is pretty good right now. Um, you can go 3 Assassins and have like other splash other stuff. Like you can go Assassins with Knights, Assassins with Wild, Gunslinger, stuff like that, which can actually be pretty good. But if you want to all in on Assassins, you can go 6 Assassins here. I think I would pick Elise over Rengar unless you have a ton of items on Rengar already. And then pick up a Kali. So then you have 6 Assassins, and then you sort of need some type of uh, tank buff. You can throw in the Guardians, Braum, Leona. You can throw in Glacial. You can just throw in like Volibear, Sejuani into any composition. That's really good because they essentially they give you the Glacial passive and they have a ton of CC. You can throw in Knights. You can throw these early game Knights in there. You can throw in the Guardian. You can throw in Wild. You can throw in Gnar. And then, for example, you can throw in, let's say, like a Warwick. This could be a nice front line. Um, or you can throw in something like a spare Yasuo out there with sorcerers or something. You can throw in Elementalist, which is very good because now you have a front line. So if you have this, Lysandra, let's say, um, Nivea, stuff like this, Brand. Now you have Elementals, so you have that big golem the front line to tank the units. So the reason why you want a front line for assassins seems kind of weird, right? Because assassins jump in the back line and the enemy's not hitting you, right? But once they start killing the initial targets, they'll start changing focus to the assassins, and then your comp's in danger. So the longer they're hitting things is the first initial target is very important. So that's why elementals can be very good because you have that big golem. Um, so that's that. Putting items on carries, you definitely want to put them on on attack speed. You want to put on the high attack speed carries. So like you have these 3 carries which are very good. Vayne, Tristan, and Italy are very good with attack speed. Varus is actually decent with attack speed. Lucian's less okay. Um, You can put Shojin. Oh, Draven's up there. Draven as well. You can throw Spear Sojin on anyone with like really good ultimate, basically. You can throw them on it. Just not the people that transform. But besides that, that's sort of all the comps and stuff, or not all the comps, but um, you just all like the idea of how you want to build comps in the game. So yeah.